But another situation, and this was his first major case. It was about 2009 when he and a female associate dressed as a pimp and a prostitute and went into an office of ACORN, which was a left-leaning community organization. They went there to apply for a loan. This is hilarious. Tell the story.
Well, it's quite a story. Bottom line up front, I went in as a pimp, and I had this young woman who was pretending to be a prostitute, and we went from office to office, and they were telling me how to disguise our business and call it something else. And this was ACORN, which is the Association of Community Organizations for Reform Now. Barack Obama was a lawyer for ACORN. He was an attorney in Chicago for ACORN, and they did a lot of housing loans.
But just back up. You went in there, said and ACORN was helping people in communities.
Baltimore, New York, Philadelphia,
in central
we
city
go in
communities
there
and they were helped by the government. The government gave them money to help people in the community apply for loans,
apply for housing loans. They did some voter registration, and they had been convicted of people at ACORN were doing voter fraud. You can read John Fund's book about that. There were examples of fraud. It was founded by this white guy in Arkansas, Wade Rathke was his name. So I didn't really know what ACORN was, but this young woman, Hannah Giles, 20 years old, sends me a Facebook message. I love what you did with Planned Parenthood. She says, what about going into this group ACORN? And I said, well, what's your idea? Because this is what people do. They send me these ideas. They send me these whistleblowers. And she goes, well, what if you went in there and said you were a hooker and said that you had ladies of the night in your house and you wanted a loan? And I immediately thought, well, that's genius, because you're going to test whether these people are breaking the law, whether they're willing to break the law. It's kind of like a sting operation.
Sure.
So I said, would you be willing to be the hooker? Would you be willing? I mean, this 20-year-old girl I'd never met in my life, but she was very attractive, and she seemed like she had some spunk, and she seemed like she was from Miami, and I saw the pictures, and
looked pretty good.
She's dressed the way she was. Maybe she'd do it. She said, absolutely, I'll do it. It's my idea. I'd love to do it. I said, okay. And then I said, well, we're going to need a pimp, because there has to be, as a hooker, there has to be a pimp. So I was trying to cast the role of this undercover journalist as a pimp. I found this guy, a guy in New Jersey. He was going to do it, and he backed out at the last minute. So I became the pimp. And I needed a costume, wardrobe. So I asked my...
Not too hard. Leather coat.
I asked my grandmother at the time if she had a fur shawl or like a fur coat, and she had this chinchilla thing in the closet. So the chinchilla coat, I got a pimp cane, a hat, and Hannah, and we go from off. I mean, we had... I want to emphasize something to you. We had no money. Negative equity. I mean, I was broke. I was living at home.
didn't exist yet. Project Veritas didn't exist.
Not for another year.
Right.
And I was just trying to make this. I had this thing called Veritas, but it wasn't even Project Veritas yet. It was just a YouTube channel. So I had no money. I was so broke. I took the Chesapeake Bay Bridge instead of the Baltimore Tunnel down to D.C. because one didn't have a toll. $4 versus $1.
And what kind of equipment did you have?
My mother had purchased me a camcorder from Best Buy, which was probably $180, and I did save a bunch of money up to buy a hidden camera, and it was this little black box. They've come a long way in the last 12 years, but it had an SD chip into it, and it was a tie. So the wire went into a tie. It was a satin tie, and the wire went into a box. I go into this Baltimore ACORN office, and this is an extraordinary video. It's still on YouTube. It's got 1 million views. And I said, we're going to start this prostitution business. And to my shock, the woman, Shira Williams was her name, across the table says, hey, Tanya, we're going to have to get some taxes and help these guys out with their tax. This is crazy. And the whole time I'm thinking, I hope this camera is still functional. And she comes back and she's now performing artists. You could be that. And I said, but we're a prostitution business. And she said, I know, but you can't say that on the tax forms. And she says, dancing. You could be a dancer. Yeah. And I said, well, sex is kind of like dancing. She said, yeah, exactly. So we have this I mean, ridiculous.
Helpful.
I mean,
She was
very
helpful.
And then I said I had 13 underage prostitutes. I'm saying these. I'm just thinking of the most outrageous things I could say. And the woman actually said to me, "You can declare them as dependents on your tax forms." And the whole time I'm thinking, I hope I'm getting this. I hope the shot is she's in my camera. So this happens, and we leave the facility. And the moment we leave the facility, I mean, my heart's beating at 150 beats per minute. It just like in the movies, I'm trying to keep a straight face. I could get found out. I'm in a very dangerous section of Baltimore. And by the way, you don't see pimps and hookers the way we looked there. Mm-hmm. We get in the car. I look at the footage. I got it. And I knew that it was historic. And then Hannah and I decided to go to other locations on the East Coast, D.C., New York.
Same
Brooklyn.
organization.
We went to San Diego. We went to the ACORN in San Diego. We won in National City, California. Mm-hmm. And every time we went, except one, they helped us. They gave us tax advice. In Brooklyn, they said to hide the pimp cash in the ground away from the authorities. In Washington, D.C., they told us to not tell the police. So we showed the sort of people that these people are. No moral compass, willing to break the law. Dr. Bob, we broke the story on September 9th, 2009. Every day we released another video.
I remember.
And every video that we released, the media said, that's just an isolated incident. and then on the fourth or fifth day, the House of Representatives, then democratically controlled, voted to defund ACORN. And then a day or two later, the Senate, 83-7. That's unheard of. In a democratically controlled United States Senate, voted to defund ACORN, and President Barack Obama signed that legislation September, I believe, 17th, 2009. So in 1 week, 2 kids from the cast of High School Musical 3 with no money and their grandmother's chinchilla coat defunded ACORN in the United States Congress. And I went from nothing to suddenly on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. Andrew Breitbart hired me, gave me $5,000 a month as which was to me at that point
great
astronomical amounts of money to live, and that was the beginning of a lot.
But to people, everyone watches the news these days, and they say, "Well, things are turning to shit. Things look terrible, but what can we do?" There is something you can do. Every one of you can do something. What he did wasn't extraordinary. It was extraordinary creativity and courage, but it didn't take a lot of money to do it. It took the desire and the chutzpah, the nerve, to go out and do it. And that caused ACORN to be defunded, and I believe it was later went out of business. Or it was totally defunded, went out of business. He put a criminal enterprise, or an enterprise that was clearly breaking the law, out of business single-handedly. He and this girl single-handedly, with maybe $200, $300 worth of equipment, did the right thing. So people who say, "What can we do?" There's something everybody can do.